Hey everyone, so in this video we are going to talk about the integumentary system. We've only got 4 diagrams for this section, so it should be a quick video, but make sure as always that you're going through and not only recording the labels for anatomy, but that you are taking notes on the physiology so that you can earn full credit when it comes time to grade these diagrams, okay? To start off, I just want to let you know I am going to go out of order because it's just how I think it makes a little more sense. And we are actually going to start with this bottom image. Okay, reason being we're looking at all the layers of our integument here, whereas the top one is just a small portion of it. So I want to cover the overview first, and then we'll dive deeper into the individual components that are highlighted up at the top. So to start off, we're just looking at a section of skin here, and you can see there's a lot of different structures. The first on the top left being sweat glands. Okay, of course, sweat glands are going to help with homeostasis, maintaining body temperature, as well as your fluid levels in your body. So keep that in mind. And we've also got 2 different types of receptors shown in this image. Your first one here, which is N, this is what we refer to as a Meissner corpuscle. And Meissner corpuscles are going to be responsible for light touch. So they are your light touch receptors. A little bit deeper though in this section, we have M, which is a Pacinian corpuscle. And the Pacinian corpuscle is going to be more so for vibration and deep pressure. That's what that's going to pick up on. On the right hand side, we've got our layers here. You may have been, or you may be familiar that the skin is multiple layers. And so our first top portion, G, is our epidermis. Remember, epi meaning above or upon. We then have the dermis, and we have the hypodermis. The hypodermis is not part of the dermis, which is why it's named hypodermis, because hypo means below. So this is the layer that's below the dermis. And finally, our dermis actually consists of 2 layers, H being the papillary layer, and I being the reticular layer. Okay. Now, I mentioned that I wanted to go out of order because while we have this large section of skin, and we've talked about the epidermis, dermis, and hypodermis, the epidermis is actually made of 5 layers. And so if we take this little section that I'm highlighting here, this is what is magnified in this diagram up here. Okay, so since we've gone over that the dermis is made of the papillary and reticular layers, let's talk about the layers that make up the epidermis. And so the first, or the more superior superficial layer, superficial meaning towards the top, is the stratum corneum. Okay, this is the layer that as it is on the surface, when you have like dry skin or skin cells that are ready to kind of slough off of you, they're going to come from that stratum corneum and then be replaced by these cells in the next layer, the stratum lucidum. However, the stratum lucidum depends on where you're at in the body. The stratum lucidum is only going to be present in areas of your body that have thick skin. Okay, so if we're looking at an area that is thinner skin and does not have a stratum lucidum, the corneum is going to be replaced by this layer, the stratum granulosum. Okay, and it's called the granulosum because you can see all these granules within those cells. However, as these cells die off, they're going to move up. Well, they don't physically move up, it's just that, well, I suppose they technically do as new cells are formed, but they're going to be more towards the surface because that dead tissue that you lose on a daily basis is being exfoliated away and replaced by the deeper layers. Following the granulosum, the stratum spinosum, which is D, and you can see that the stratum spinosum actually spans a larger area. It actually kind of dips like this. There we go. So this is one of the larger layers. And then finally we have our last layer, which is the stratum basal. So this is kind of like the bottom basal layer. And what is being highlighted here within that basal layer is the fact that this layer is going to house your melanocytes. And melanocytes, cyte being the term cell, melano meaning melanin. These are going to be your pigment producing cells. Everyone has these cells unless you have albinism. If technically any organism is albino, it means they do not have these pigments. But whether you have very fair skin or very dark skin, you do have melanocytes. What happens is as UV radiation hits your skin, it's going to trigger the production of melanin. Melanin, the pigment, is then going to serve kind of as an umbrella for your nuclei in your cells to help prevent mutations in your DNA from UV radiation. Now, in individuals who are more fair, it just means, so for example, if you tend to get sunburn, it's not that you don't have melanocytes, because you do. It just means that they are not as efficient at producing melanin. And when you do go in the sun, if you are somebody who just naturally gets darker, your melanocytes are more efficient. And then finally, if you're somebody who is naturally darker, it just means that you have more active melanocytes and they're more likely in a higher concentration. So of all the various different types of skin colors that people have, it's simply based on the production of melanin, the rate that it's produced, as well as the concentration of these melanocytes within your skin. Okay, let's go ahead and turn to the next page. We're going to cover structures within the skin, which is hair for the first one, and then we'll talk about nails. So here on the top, we're looking at the structure of hair, and starting off deeper within the dermis, you can see that we have kind of the origin of our hair. This is going to be the bulb. And if you follow the bulb, I'm going to highlight this. Hopefully you can see this okay. Coloring it in. The part that I'm coloring in is the actual hair. Okay. The area surrounding it, I'm going to do this in, let's say, yellow. This here is still part of the dermis. This is the follicle, the yellow part here. And so the follicle is going to be the dermis tube that's going to surround the hair. And the part of the hair that's enclosed that I had colored in blue, this is the root. Okay, and so, by the way, I made a comment there about dermis. Okay, and so the root, your hair is considered the root if it's enclosed within the skin. Okay, as soon as the hair emerges from the skin, it's then referred to as the shaft. Okay, so the shaft of your hair means that it's exposed and it's emerging from the skin, right? Now, it's in this diagram again. We already went over this. This is our Pacinian corpuscle. So this is going to be our vibrations and pressure mechanoreceptor. What I want to really talk about, though, is E and F with you here. First off, E is what we call a sebaceous gland. You may have heard of something called a sebaceous cyst before. If not, that's fine. In other words, a sebaceous gland is another term for an oil gland. Okay, so this is going to produce oils, and as you can see, this gland is very close to your root of your hair, and it's actually going to kind of cheat the system and use the root as kind of like a duct so that it can release oils. And so this is why your hair gets oily, because these sebaceous glands are going to secrete their oils into your into the follicle where the root is. And then finally, we have a muscle here, which is represented by F. This is a muscle called erector pili. That was messy. Let me fix that. And erector pili are more of an evolutionary adaptation because this is what's going to cause goosebumps. It's much more effective on individuals who are fur covered, so certain animals. In humans, we aren't completely hair covered. We still do get goosebumps, but they're not as efficient. The point here is that as this muscle contracts, it's going to pull the surrounding dermis of the bulb so that it causes the hair to stand up. And so if we were hair covered, it would kind of increase the area that our hair is covering to help with thermoregulation. In many other animals, so for example, if you've ever seen a dog or a cat get scared, they might have their hair stand up. They're utilizing their erector pili as more of a defense mechanism to try and make themselves look larger. So that covers the hair. So lastly, let's go ahead and talk about the nail. Quite a bit going on here. Let's start up at the top. We have our nail root. So this is where the nail is originating. Okay, we're going to have that kind of calcification going on to form that hard nail. And you have your cuticle represented by K. It's not actually called the cuticle though. It's actually the eponychium. Okay, so the eponychium is, in other words, the cuticle. Just near the cuticle, if you look at your fingernail, you should notice that there's an area of skin below the nail that's a different color than the rest of the area, and it's most likely in a little half moon shape. And because of its shape, this area of skin is referred to as the lunula. So think of lunar, the moon. So this is the lunula. The skin that is on either side of your nail is the nail fold. And the portion of your nail that is rigid, or the portion that gets painted, if you've ever painted your nails, is the nail plate. And the area that ends up growing out over top of the skin, the region that you trim, is the free edge. And finally, below the free edge, you have a region of thickened skin, and this is the hyponychium. So this is supposed to be a CH. Okay, and all of these structures are formatted on top of this section here, which in layman's term we call the nail bed. Anatomically speaking, we're going to refer to it as the nail matrix. Because remember, when we talked about tissues, the term matrix referred to background substance. So this is essentially the background substance of your nail, which makes up the nail bed. All right, so that covers integument, both the layers of the dermis and epidermis, as well as structures within the skin.